Size does matter with your snakes. Do not let anybody tell you that it doesn't. And I really only need one explanation as to why the size in relation to the age of your snake matters. And that's feeding habits. People that want to tell you that they don't weigh their snakes, they never weigh their snakes, weight doesn't matter because age is the only determining factor with their snakes and whether or not they're ready to go or not ready to go, and age and weight and blah blah blah, all that stuff doesn't matter. But it absolutely does, because the biggest issue I see with listings nowadays on Morph Market is that there's a snake and it's a 2021 and we're now in 2024 and it's a female and there's no weight listed on there, and it still says baby. It doesn't say subadult, doesn't say adult. That's a 3-year-old, 2.5 to 3-year-old snake at this point. It should be an adult. It should be adult size. It should be ready to breed size within 3 years. I do not power feed my snakes, and most of my snakes are 1,400 grams within a year and a half, 2 years max. So when you come across a snake that's 3 years old in Morph Market, it's been listed since 2022. Its birth date was in 2021. There's no weight. The ad basically hasn't been updated since it was a baby. And you ask that person what the weight of that snake is. Either one, their response is, I don't weigh my snakes. Well, don't buy that snake from them. I'm telling you, it's probably a bad choice. 2, they give you a weight that's 500 grams. That's another red flag. Run away. Because that snake is 3 years old, should not be 500 grams anymore. That tells you 2 things right up front. Either that breeder is maintenance feeding that snake, meaning that they're just feeding it the bare minimum amount of food. They're not really putting anything that's a appropriate sized meal in that snake. Or 2, which is probably more concerning, is that it's not a good eater. If you have a snake that's 3 years old, that's the size of some other people's 6-month-old snakes, that means they're not eating. They're not eating well. They're picky eaters. That's not a snake that you want to get into your collection. Believe me, I have come across many of them. This boy here, I showed him in a couple other videos over the past couple weeks, and I've kind of called him Tiny Tim because he spent the first couple months, 6 months of his life refusing food, and I've had to assist and force feed this guy. So if I put this snake up on Morph Market and didn't list that he was a picky eater or wasn't eating at all, and I tried to sell him, that's pretty damn dishonest. Now, he's actually eating on his own every single week for the past month straight. He's been eating meals on his own, but I'm still not putting him up for sale because he's probably going to end up being a holdback anyways because of his genetics. But because he might be a Posset clown and a Posset MJ Xanthic. So I'm probably going to keep him as a breeder anyways. But I still would not list him on Morph Market at this point because I'm not comfortable with his history that he's a good eater yet. Maybe if he's 6 months old and he's, 400 grams at that point, I'd feel comfortable listing him. But not right now. He's still the size of some of my hatchlings or 1 month old snakes, and he's 6 months old. So he's not getting listed. If there are snakes on there that are 3 years old and they're females, and nobody is listing whether or not those snakes are 300 grams or 1,000 grams or 2,000 grams, I would not be buying them. And that's kind of the point I want to touch on here, and that's, don't let people tell you that weight doesn't matter. It doesn't matter once they're at adult size. It doesn't matter once they're proven breeders. It doesn't, and those are, I don't know if there's really any other circumstances where it doesn't matter. But anything below that, in size, it does matter, because you don't want to be buying a snake that's a picky eater. You don't want to buy a snake that's been maintenance fed, because you have no idea what it's going to be like trying to get that snake on the food regularly or to get it up to size. And you could be buying you could be paying a lot of money for a snake that by the time you're able to breed it may have lost half its value. This is all, if you're doing this and you're investing in it and you're trying to run it like a business, your whole goal is to buy healthy snakes that are at healthy weights, at the appropriate age, that are eating on a regular basis, and are able to breed for you on a normal time frame. So, this is there's a lot of misinformation, or I feel like old anecdotal words of wisdom that some older breeders like to pass along, or some lazy breeders like to pass along. And there's no way that you could argue with me and say that it's okay to not list a weight of a snake and that it doesn't matter what that snake weighs in accordance to what its age is. It's a very important piece of information. If somebody's not willing to give you the weight of a snake, that's probably because they have something to hide. Do not buy that snake. To be honest, I wouldn't do business with that person. I actually asked for the weight of a snake, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. And if anybody knows me, they'll know that I willingly spend money. I spent $30,000 with Chimera last year. Basically, every dollar that I made last year, I gave to Chimera to upgrade my collection. So I have no issue spending money to buy and upgrade my collection. That's all I've been doing for the last 6 years. So I asked this breeder, established breeder, hey, what's the age of this snake? It was a female. It was a few years old. The response was, I don't weigh my snakes. I don't know. It's not important to me. Whatever they said. I don't remember what it was because it was a year or two ago. And this was my response to them. I said, well, it does matter. I need to know if this snake is at breeding size yet. I need to know whether or not it's been a picky eater. How big is this snake? You can't just try to sell me a 3-year-old snake and not tell me how big it is and what the size is. Because a 3-year-old snake, the size does matter. If you're charging me the same price that other people are charging for an adult snake with the same genetics, that are the same age, but you're not willing to tell me the size of it, it completely matters. Because if you're selling me a baby or a 300-gram snake that doesn't eat for the same price that somebody else is willing to sell me an adult, there is a big problem there. And I can't believe this or breeders like that don't have more bad reviews. Because if you're getting a snake from me, I don't care whether it's a hatchling or an adult, the weights are updated the second that I list those snakes. Now, there might be some variation. That snake might have a big poop by the time I sell it. And the adult snakes, I don't usually keep re-weighing if they're listed for a few months. But the babies, if they've been listed for a while, I usually update their weights every 2 months or so. Because a baby at 3 weeks old, it can be a lot different in size from a baby that's 2 or 3 months old. But any snake that's at a very old listing, they got to be weighed. You got to get that weight. I would not be buying anything unless that seller states in their ad that the weight was updated recently or when the ad was listed. If it's a 3-year-old ad and there's no weight or the weight hasn't been put on there since it was first listed, I would 110% get that weight because it does matter. There are way too many people that maintenance feed snakes or underfeed snakes, and I've purchased a few myself, and I've purchased a few from some really big breeders that I got them in, and I was like, holy shit, like, this snake should be a little bigger than this, or a lot bigger than this. And it really hasn't come back to bite me too hard. Most of those snakes I was able to get on food and grow them up and kind of catch them up into the growth cycle from what I feel is appropriate. But yeah, I mean, it matters. Weight does matter. Age matters too. You can't just cross out any of these factors and say they don't matter across the board. Sometimes you need to factor some things in differently than other times. As I covered in the video yesterday, I have a 3,000 gram female. It was her first time laying a clutch of eggs and they were all bad. And she had 2 males locked with her. They were both proven breeder males and she still laid all slugs. So no, in that respect, weight doesn't make a difference. That doesn't mean you're going to get a healthy clutch or not. That has nothing to do with weight, whether or not that clutch is going to be healthy or not, when you're up in those higher levels. But I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to breed a 1,000-gram snake, the odds of you having a healthy clutch are probably a little better if that female's 2,000 grams. Where weight does matter is in relation to that snake's age. That makes a big difference, especially when the vast majority of the snakes for sale in morph market are hatchling to 2 or 3 years old. I haven't actually done the math on that. I don't even know if you can sort that way. I guess you could say any snake, maybe 3 years and under and see how many are listed. But I would almost guarantee you that the majority of snakes fall into that category. So if those are the snakes that are being sold and the snakes that people are buying, weight in relation to age is a huge factor, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise.